The federal government's laying the groundwork for the 2020 census. The information is important for representation in Congress and federal funding. Getting the numbers right also depends on the help of temporary workers. To tell us about what's ahead is a media specialist for the 2020 census, Ethel Shepard. Thank you very much for being with us, Ethel.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Ethel, I'm sure everybody knows a census is a head count, but what else goes on in this census?
Oh my goodness, there is so much that goes on in this census. Right now, as you know, we're about to embark upon the 2020 census, and some people may think that that's all that we do. We actually do about 130 surveys throughout the year and throughout the course of the years, and they can cover topics that range from housing, from businesses and economics, and it may include a community survey, which is a more in-depth look at the information and how we live and work and play, and it also may cover political, how governments work together. So that's just the range of topics that the census actually examines every year.
Now, I guess there was maybe once a time when somebody had to come to your door and ask you questions, but these days, isn't this something like just a form you fill out?
It is a form. Everyone has to reply to the census. It's mandated by the Constitution, and so it's your civic duty to reply, and so much depends upon it in terms of services that are provided to people, and so we say that everyone must reply to the census.
People get this thing in the mail, they say, oh, it's not a bill, I don't have to pay it right away, then they forget about it. If a lot of people didn't do that, they just blew this off, what would be the harm in that?
Well, there's a lot of harm in it because there's public services at risk. There's $675 billion that's going to be distributed to states based upon that count, the numbers in that count. And those are funds that pay for services that include housing, and it includes for roads, it includes for hospitals and emergency services. So it's really important that people respond.
Of course, another thing that the census can be important about is for drawing the lines of districts for representatives in Congress. Sometimes those lines are not drawn the right way. They can even be racially discriminatory. So how does the census play into that?
Well, the data that's used from the census is actually used to determine those legislative districts. It's used to determine voting districts and school districts as well as voting precincts. It's also used to determine the amount of funds that'll be used for, let's say, to build hospitals. Most people, those are very general categories, but that includes programs like Section 8. It includes funds for Medicare and Medicaid. It includes funding for Head Start. Those are just some of the major things and also for emergency services such as fire departments and neighborhood improvements. So it's very important that people respond to the census. Those numbers count, and everyone should count and be counted.
Now, when some people hear federal census or government census, they might think, well, that's a way of counting U.S. citizens, but this is not just people who have the status of being a U.S. citizen, right?
Oh, no. When we say it's mandated by the Constitution, first of all, that every 10 years we do a count of people and of population. So in order for them to do that, in order for the census to do that and to come up with an accurate count, we count citizens, we count non-citizens, we count people who are living in the United States who may not be citizens, we are counting immigrants. Everyone must be counted. We don't care about how long you've been here. We don't care where you're from. If you're living in the United States, everyone must be counted. So basically, we want a head count, and what we say is we want to count you once and only once and in the right place.
Now, one thing that's not new to this year's census is that some people are worried about their privacy. What would you say about that?
Well, and it's a concern, especially given in these times. But in order for the census to do its job, it has to protect your privacy. And that's one of the things we do when we collect the data. We try to be respectful of your time and your privacy. Confidentiality is key to the census. Without it, we couldn't do our jobs. And so it's against no federal agency, no federal organization can access any information that can identify you as a person. That's as a result of Title 13. And in addition to that, as a census employee, each and every census employee has to take an oath, a sworn oath for life to protect your information. And it's a crime to do other than that. If you do that, it's a crime punishable by $250,000 or 5 years in federal prison or both. So we take that very seriously, Chris.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Ethel Shepard from the 2020 Census. Ethel, can you tell me a little bit about when things are going to be going out to people?
Yeah, so people will start receiving their notice on the 2020, on responding to the 2020 census around mid-March. So in mid-March, you'll receive your first notice that this is how you respond. And I need to add that you can respond for the first time online, as well as by phone or by U.S. mail. And if you don't respond by a certain date, by April 1st, then someone will come to your door and help you actually finish your questionnaire.
Well, you just brought me to the next question here, which is about the helpers, because you have a lot of temporary employees you're going to need. Tell me a little bit about how many, what kind of things you want them to do.
Well, first, and just to give you a little background, Chris, the first census was taken in 1790 by Thomas Jefferson. To give you an idea of where we are now versus then, he hired about 600 people to count approximately 3 million people in the United States at that time. For this 2020 census, we're looking to hire nationwide approximately 500,000 people to count 330 million people, and that's a lot. It's actually our largest peacetime operation.
What about people who can understand some languages in addition to English? Would that be needed as well?
Yes, so we're looking for people, we're looking to hire people who can actually go out and help people respond to the census takers. And that would be very helpful. We're looking to hire people who are local, who understand their neighborhood, and who who speak another language, because as you know, Boston is a very diverse city, and so there are many languages here, and I believe the last estimate I had at least 39. All of the census information will be in English as well as in Spanish. So, and in addition to those 2 languages, we also will have an additional 12 languages where you can respond online or by phone. And if you don't speak any of the 12 languages, there are another 59 languages where we provide information and instructions to help you actually complete the census questionnaire.
Well, finally, we should if people have any questions either about the census or some of these employment opportunities, what's the best way for them to follow up on that?
Well, we're hiring now, Chris, and we're hoping that people will apply now, and to do so they can go to 2020census.gov. I just want to add that those are positions that are part-time, temporary, 25 hours a week. They pay really well, $25 an hour, and it's a great way to make some extra money, maybe to pay for those Christmas bills. But 2020census.gov/jobs is where everyone should go to apply. It'll take about 20 to 30 minutes to complete the questionnaire.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Ethel Shepard from the 2020 Census.
All
We'll
right.
have more news in just a moment.